Pennsylvania is recognized for any questions he may have.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Thank God for double standards, because if it weren't for double standards, Democrats would have no standards at all. Let me just go through irregular order from the 117th. And this is just a brief list. I could have a more exhaustive list, but the majority in the 117th noticed 49 emergency measures. It's nearly 40% more than the 34 emergency members under the Republican majority in the 115th. Let me just give you some examples. The Democratic majority noticed 4 policing bills in late July, but failed to bring them to the floor. Why did they fail to bring them to the floor? Easy, because of pressure from far-left radicals in the Progressive Caucus. But despite that, they were looking at an election cycle where they needed to bring these bills to the floor. So nearly 2 months later, again, after the midterm elections and facing political pressure, the House Democrats noticed those same bills under what? An emergency designation. Okay, another example of kowtowing to the radical extremists on the far left. The Democrats on 117th, the Rules Committee called an emergency meeting on the Protecting Renters from Eviction Act of 2021. That was after the House waited in limbo for nearly 9 hours. The majority failed to even report the so-called emergency from the Rules Committee. On 4 separate other occasions, the Democratic majority announced meetings on bills before text was even available. We didn't even have text, if you remember that, and we were here expecting to debate in the Rules Committee. I could go on. There was also irregularities with the massive bill, which was Build Back Better. But again, the hypocrisy and the double standards are totally, they're just amazing when you look at the totality of the irregular order we were under during Democrat control. It was asked of my friend, Mr. Lawler, where he was on all this. I can tell you where Mr. Lawler was. We have been in negotiations since Mr. Lawler got here. We've been having talks with him, Mr. Desposito, Mr. Laloda, others, numerous times, not just this week. But Mr. Lawler, would you like to respond to any of this and talk about the process here?
Thank you, Mr. Reschenthaler. The very first bill that I introduced was a version of this bill. And the reason I introduced eliminating the marriage penalty was because I understand that at the end of the day, we have to find compromise. Yes, I would like to have unlimited salt back. Yes, I would like to lift the cap on salt. It expires in 2025. So if we do nothing at all, it expires. But our constituents need immediate tax relief because of the failed economic policies of Joe Biden. Inflation has crippled our economy. The cost of living has skyrocketed. The cost of energy has skyrocketed. The ranking member may dismiss the resolution that is coming after this, but the reality is that when you restrict natural gas, when you restrict oil, it actually has a negative impact on our economy, on cost of goods, on cost of transportation. This is an existential crisis for families all across the country, but especially in districts like mine. The ranking member comes from Massachusetts. The witness comes from Illinois. These are high-tax states. We all know that. And yes, I do believe that folks should not be penalized for living in high-tax states, which is why I have opposed the cap on salt. And I oppose double taxation. But when you are trying to compromise in a divided government, you have to actually be willing to negotiate. And this is what has been negotiated between myself, Mr. Laloda, Mr. Desposito, Mr. Garcia, Mr. Harris, Mr. Garbarino, with our colleagues on Ways and Means, as well as with leadership. I would have preferred this be in the bill. But unfortunately, Mr. Wyden, leading the Democrats, who claim they want to lift the cap on salt, didn't fight to get it in the bill. Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader from New York, silent. He didn't fight to get it in the bill. When Democrats had complete control of Washington for 2 years, and they increased spending by $5 trillion in 2 years, they didn't lift the cap on salt. They easily could have done that. And in fact, one of your colleagues came to me on the floor yesterday and said, "Thank you for fighting for this. When our party had complete control, we failed to do anything on this. Thank you for standing up for us." So to belittle the attempt to provide tax relief and say, oh, it's not enough. You're on the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Schneider, and yet did nothing to actually get it done. You could say you offered an amendment. Did you do anything to pay for it? What was the pay for? You're sitting here accusing us of not having a pay for on a tax cut, which doesn't require a pay for, but what was your pay for in the markup? I think what is absurd here is all of us are trying to help our constituents. Democrats fought to expand the child tax credit. I absolutely support that. That's why I sent a letter with Congressman Gottheimer to Chairman Smith a few weeks ago, calling for that. I believe in that. I believe in what was done to support our small businesses who are all struggling under this economy. But providing some SALT relief is better than nothing. And if this is the agreement that we can get passed, why wouldn't we support that?